Hello and welcome back. Okay, so let's continue talking about these t-shirt objects. So we talked about the properties of a t-shirt. Those are the instance variables. And we had our constructor, which set up. One thing I did want to point out about the constructor, a constructor, as you see, does not return anything, but it's also not void. It just has no return type whatsoever. It's just public t-shirt. There's nothing there. But now we're going to write some other methods that do return objects or variables or whatever. Okay. So what we talked about up here is we created a t-shirt, and these were the properties of it. But we also said objects not just had properties, but things you can do with a t-shirt. Okay, and these are methods. So we're going to write methods that we can do with each individual t-shirt. Okay, so let's talk briefly about what these are going to look like. And one tip I want to give you is methods in your objects are not going to be static. I know that's a little weird. We're going to talk a lot more about static later, I promise. But for now, just rewrite methods that are not static. Basically, what static means is there's only one copy. And when something is not static, we can have multiple copies. So we can have multiple t-shirts, and they all have their own color. They all have their own size. Some of them are dirty and some are not. The idea of having them all be different, that's what not being static means. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some things you can do with your shirt. So, I don't know, maybe you want to wear your shirt. So if you want to wear your shirt, that might be a void method, so just public void wear. And as always, you can write methods however you like. So your methods can have whatever inputs and outputs you want, and they can contain any type of code. So you could put loops in there, you could find variables, you could do all sorts of stuff. You can return, you can do math. There's no limits to what you could put inside these methods. Okay, so if I want to wear your shirt, let's say when I wear my shirt, I'll just say, hey, you look good. Okay, now one thing that I might want to do, maybe I want to mention, say, the color of the shirt. So I can also use instance variables in any method. And again, that's one thing we talked about. These instance variables are applicable throughout the entire class because they're not defined in a method. They're defined in the class, so the whole class can use them. So we'll say, you look good in your shirt, which is, and then we'll use that color. Okay, maybe we'll put a space in there so it prints out nicely. And after we do that, we can even change instance variables. So after you wear your shirt, then we're going to go ahead and set is dirty to equal true. After you wear is probably a little dirty. Okay, now once you've worn your shirt, maybe you want to wash it. So that'll be a public void wash your shirt. Okay, so in this case, and again, there's no static in these methods. So here we'll have just print out. Okay, like rumble rumble Tide Pod. Okay, and then after we go ahead and wash our shirt, now the is dirty is changed to be false. And don't forget, the is dirty is just for this particular shirt. Okay, so let's talk about how to call these methods. And again, I want to draw an analogy to a string. So how do you call a string method? Well, what you do is you do the name of the string dot the method name. Right, if we want to get the length of movie, we do movie.length. If I want to do movie.substring, I do movie.substring, from 1 to 3. Okay, when I call a method on an object, it follows the exact same pattern. So when I call a method on a t-shirt, so say I want to wear my favorite t-shirt, so fav.wear. So again, it's just the name of the variable dot method name. That's it. And then when I want to wash my favorite shirt, I just do fav dot, and then I'll call the wash. Okay, now the next thing I might want to do is wear the other shirt. So maybe I want to wear my son's shirt. I need to lose a lot of weight, but I would do something like that. Okay, so what that's going to do, that's going to call this method. It's a void method, so it's going to run in this bit of code and then print this out. Now when I get to my son's shirt, it's going to call this method and write that out. It's going to tell him he looks good in his shirt. His color shirt is different than mine, right? I'm wearing a black shirt, he's wearing a white shirt. So let's go ahead and run this so we can see what that's going to look like. All right, so when I run my driver, it's going to create these objects here. So when I wore my shirt, it told me I look good in my black shirt. And then I washed my shirt, so it said Tide Pods. And then it said I wore my son's shirt, and that's what happened there. Okay, so one thing you might notice is, well, what if I didn't want to wash the shirt? What if I was just chilling in the driver and I wanted to see what color that shirt was? Okay, so you can have something called an accessor method. So there is an accessor method. And these are great because what they do is they allow you to see the values of these instance variables in another class. So we're going to talk about this later, but what private means is you can only see it within this class. So unless you have some kind of accessor value to kind of port it out, there's no way to actually see this private variable in t-shirt from my t-shirt driver without writing a method like this. So this allows me to see, I can't change it necessarily through this, but I can see it. So this method is going to return and tell you the color of my shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, okay, this returns a string, public string, get color. And what this is going to do, this is just going to return the instance variable for color. So just return color. That's what I call my instance variable. Okay, so what that's going to do is if I want to access just the color of my shirt, here's how I call that. So if I want to call the accessor method, and it's public, so anything's public I can access from another class. So I'm going to say fave.getColor. Now that's not going to do anything, right? Because I didn't print out what it returns. You know, it just runs the code. It doesn't print anything out. So maybe I want to put that inside a print line right there. So I'm going to system.out a print line and print out whatever that method returns. So what that does, it says, okay, I'm going to go to my fave object. I've created this t-shirt somewhere in my memory. And then that shirt has a color of black. Okay, so now when I print it out, it's going to say, okay, that shirt is black. And if I want to get the color of my son's shirt, I could do the same thing and just call sons.getColor. Okay, sons. All right, so now when I go ahead and run this bit of code, we'll see, of course, my son has a white shirt, so that's terrific. All right, now, one more thing you might want to do is be able to change the color, right? Maybe you want to dye your shirt. You get tired of a white shirt. It's just kind of boring. So maybe you want to do public. Okay, so let's talk firstly about this. Now we want a method that allows us to change an instance variable, like color, to be something else. And that something else will be an input to this method. Okay, so I'm going to have a public void, let's call it change color. Okay, and this is going to input some string for new color. Okay, and what this is going to do is this is just going to change the color of the shirt to be whatever my input is. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to set the instance variable here to be the input to this method. So my instance variable was named color. So I'm going to say I'll set the color to equal new color. Okay, so that will actually affect a permanent change on this. So that permanent, until I call this again, but that permanently changes the value of the instance variable. So if I want to go ahead and change that, okay, so this is a void method. I can't print it out. I mean, we've seen that error before if you try and print out a void method, but I can call it directly. And I can call it just like something else. So if I'm going to change the color of my son's shirt, so say he spilled some food on it, I'm going to change the color of his shirt to be, say, gray. Okay, and now we'll see this has changed. Because if I try and get the color of a shirt again after that, we're going to see that that actually is different. Okay, so we can see it's been changed when I call get color again. Now it's gray. Okay, so that was a lot of basics. I think those are the main things I wanted to talk about today. Those are some of the methods you can create. So we talked about just, you can create random methods to just do whatever. You know, you can put loops in these, you could change instance variables, you could see instance variables. You could just do something random like math. But you can also have something called an accessor method, so you can directly see it from somewhere else. And you could have a mutator method, so you can actually change it from somewhere else. And then the other thing we talked about, right, was how to create these objects, and then how to call the method on the object. So I call the method here on sons. And again, that's just like how we create a string and call a method on a string. Now, speaking of strings, I did want to talk about one thing. I wanted to share with you the string source code. I'll share this link with you in the notes, but this is actually the source code for strings. Someone wrote a public class string. And whenever you've created strings all year, you've been using that. So there are a bunch of comments in here, but there is this public final class string. And if you look at this, the instance variable, there are several, but the main instance variable is an array of chars. So there you go. A string really is just an array of chars, which I think is kind of beautiful. But you can look through here and find some things. So for example, there's the length method. Here's the length method. It just returns how many entries are in the array that count. You can find, say, the index of method. Here's the index of. It just kind of gives you, well, it calls another index of method. That's kind of confusing. But here it actually does like loop through in a sense and find where something is. There's a substring method, right? We have a substring method. Well, there are two versions of substring. But here's the one. Again, it just goes through. And this is a little complicated. But those are all methods we've been calling all along. So someone went in and wrote those methods and wrote those instance variables for the string class just like you guys are going to do. Okay, so this is an exciting new frontier. Again, make sure you bring some questions to class, and thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.